Thank you, Tom. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow committee members. Welcome to the virtual special finance committee meeting on Wednesday, the 9th of December. We'll kick straight off to proceedings. It's a fairly short agenda this evening. So 59820, declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interests to receive any additional interest not already received. Is there anybody who would like to say anything there, please?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, if anything should arise during the course of discussions, please feel free to raise that at that time. So we move on to 59920, apologies for absence. Do we have any, please, Mr. Crimmen?
No, I haven't received any tonight.
Okay, I actually have received one from Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Noted.
Thank you. So we will move on in that case to item 620, review of the budget 2021, to review the budget and the precept implications and to decide on a recommendation to full council. Now, I'm not going to bring Alan in at this point, to be perfectly honest. He is available for questions should anybody have them. I do believe that this particular budget has been, through the macerations, shall we say, has been thoroughly chewed through all of the committees in the last week or two, and we now have a revised picture. I will open up the floor for questions, please.
Madam Chair, wait a minute. No, it's up. Don't worry. It's just come on screen, so I don't need that question.
No,
we're actually standing at the moment at 2.90% on Band D.
That's correct. And the precept, the impact of this budget, if recommended to full council and if accepted by full council, would mean that the precept would increase by 2.9%. It would increase on a Band D property, which is always our benchmark that we use, from £125.32 per annum to £128.96 per annum. In most cases, there will be a deferment of expenditure. So many of the projects and works that were looking to be undertaken next year will actually be deferred, but there are some larger projects that are already committed to, that funding is already available via the reserves and that kind of thing. There will be no short-term impact, no immediate short-term impact to those. As you'll recall from the discussions in the committees, Alan and the senior management team will be keeping a very close eye on this once we go into the 2021-2022 financial year, and there will be quarterly budget reviews. And should income levels be restored, so from our actual income generation side of things, we can look to reinstate relevant expenditure, but that's only if the money is there. So this is very much based on, initially was very much based on an operational budget, but you will recall that there were some changes made within the committees. Any questions, please, committee?
I've got one. I know we base it on Band D, but all public are being hit, whether you're in Band D, Band A, or anything else. And the town council are going to put it up by £125 a year, then Brickland, and then county. I do find that we could have, in some cases, we could have made a few more cuts to try to. Because it seems like we're stealing from the poor. I know it doesn't make sense, but as for the budget itself, there's not a lot we can actually change because it's not our budgets. It's the council's budgets.
Okay. Alan, would you be able to, obviously I'm mindful that you've done an incredible amount of work on this, and we at the committee are incredibly grateful to the work that both you and the senior management team have done on this, because I know it hasn't been an easy task. I understand that there were some additions in meetings. Where were we starting from in terms of a percentage increase to keep us at a basic contractual obligation and legal obligation basis? What was that percentage increase on the precept, please?
Yeah, the percentage increase, the very original one was 11%, 11.99 something percent. We did a revised budget as an S&T before we went to the various committees, and that brought it down to about 2.37%. And then some committees have reduced their expenditure, and some committees increased their expenditure, or reinstated some of those expenditure that had been in the original budget, and that's how we ended up in the 2.9%.
Thank you, Alan. I've got hands up from Councillor Brain, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask the staff questions. I was sort of expecting to see at this meeting something that told me what each committee had done and made it simple for me, because I really am simple. I looked at the agenda and the revised draft budget, and the index says all sorts of things about budget summary 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, which I really couldn't sort of quite work out what that actually meant. But looking at what I assume is page 1, which is the revised, the summary of the operational budget. Looking at that, it says that each of the departments or committees or various things, it shows the 1920 and the 2021, and then 21-22. And I'm just trying, I can't work out where their savings have been, because without having the other budget on there, I'm just at a bit of a loss. I sort of expected to see something that said such and such committee saved X%, didn't, or whatever. And I can't find that. Or it's probably here, but I ain't sharp enough to work it out. So if somebody could help.
Alan, would it be possible to have your assistance on this one? I know from the Civic Committee that we had just recently, we probably took about 30% off of our expenditure. So we're quite a small committee, and it's a shame actually, because we were looking at being responsible for the town events, which are for the people, and the free of charge stuff, that feel good stuff, and we've had to curtail that work. So Alan, could you give us a brief perhaps oversight of what Councillor Brame's looking for, please?
Sure. I thought I was very organised and pulled up all the documentation, but let me just make sure.
If I can help you, Alan, I must say on allotments they wanted us to save £1,000. We have a very, very small budget, and there was no way we could let that go through. So we wanted to remain as we was.
Okay, I've got the information available. If I could run through the various committees. From an income perspective, the only significant change we made was around the venues, events, and marketing budget. They had originally budgeted 128,000, and on the revised budget, that originally came down to 53,000. But in the committee, they actually put it back up to about 54. It's actually still is 53,000. In terms of expenditure, personnel, there was a saving. Venues, them also had a saving, 44,000 down to 28,000. The Civic Committee had probably the biggest change in terms of percentage. That went down from 21. It used to be 21,000. It went down to 14,000. The ALP budget went from 156,000 to 133,000. The cemetery budget came down by 1,000, and the allotments remained the same at £8,046. So all the committees did offer up savings. In certain cases, they added some projects, but they took away in other instances. So if I can just quickly summarize, I think personnel came down by 6,000. Then, because it's the nature of its organization, if you reduce its income, it's obviously going to reduce its expenditure. That's come down by 16,000. Civic came down by 7,000. ALF came down by 23,000. Cemeteries came down by 1,000, and allotments remain unchanged. Does that help you, Roy?
Yeah, that's lovely. As I say, I was just looking at trying to work out my numbers because as I say, I'd got as far as the budget to do what was legally necessary. It was going to be 2.4%, and now we're up at 2.9. So that was where I was trying to work out where the numbers came from. Does that help?
Thank you, Roy. Councillor Hollis, I have your hand up, please.
Thank you. So one committee has basically paid all. Allotments we couldn't change because it was maintenance, and we obviously don't know with the weather what the costs are going to be or what if people fall out. So am I right then? So it's gone to 2.9 on a band D. There's a save. It's before the revised budget. It was 2.16%. Am I right on that? Am I reading this right?
That's 11.6.
Sorry. So it's the initial budget as proposed at our previous meeting was a nearly 12% increase on the precept.
Yeah.
This committee rejected putting that through to council and recommending that to council, and that prompted the reworking within the committees. The senior management team led by Alan on this occasion in the finance side of things worked up a plan of what it could look like given our legal obligations as a town council and also our contractual obligations, those contracts that we've entered into, we've agreed to, and we can't get out of, quite frankly. That then gave us a 2.37% increase, and we are now looking at 2.9 with the amendments that have been made. Is that a fair summary, Alan?
It is, Chair. I've been working with so many numbers. I just want to correct the figure I gave you earlier on.
Not a problem.
When we did the initial, the SMT revised budget, before it went to committees, it wasn't 2.37, it was actually 2.16. So I've overstated that by 0.21%. So I think Councillor Hollis is right. There was a figure of 216, and that it was that revised budget figure. So, but that was just the SMT looking at the budget and making some suggestions. It remains with the committees to whether they accepted those suggestions or amended them. And I think, some of the members that are present in this committee were present on those other committees, and they will understand that there was some give and take in most cases. In some committees, there was a perception that maybe they were taking a little bit more than giving, but in other, generally, it went extremely well. And I think what's come out compared to what we started off with, I was expecting more resistance, if I can put my personal spin on that, and I was very pleased with the way that the committees dealt with this and addressed the issue face on, which I thought was quite pleasing from a management perspective.
Thank you, Alan. And I would remind the committee that the distance travelled between the initial 11.9 to the 2.9 now represents some serious work done by both our fantastic team of officers and our committees to recognise the impact that any increase has to our residents. Have I got any more questions, please? Councillor Burnett, is there anything you would like to add at this point?
No, I'm quite happy with the figures and the outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Brindle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've just been looking at these figures. I must admit I'm slightly confused by the figures that Alan quoted. If you compare on page 1 the expenditure of the committees, compare the figure in orange, which is a 2021 budget figure, with the figure on the purple background, lilac background, which is the 2021-22 figure. It seems to me like there's at least an expenditure, a rise, for example, on the personnel. So it's going to spend more in the coming year than in the present year. So I'm just a bit surprised at the different figures that seem to be saying different things. It may be not worth pursuing that. I think at this stage, my concern has been to come to this meeting and agree with the proposal that we have in front of us. I think is depressing but necessary. It's quite true that we've got a slight rise in the precept proposal from 2.16 to 2.9. I'm calculating that. I do have a Band D house, so I've calculated that would enable me that if we didn't have any rise, the comparison with 2.16 would enable me to buy a pint of beer once a year. And if it went up to 2.9, it would enable me to buy a pint of beer in the middle of London once a year. So I must say that I think it's a very good effort to get as close as that to maintaining the precept, given that we are associated with Breckland and Norfolk. I don't think we should take the blame for increasing their precepts. They have their own issues and they may well be right to do that. But we're proposing to increase ours by the cost of, for me, as a Band D householder, a pint of beer in the middle of London. I reckon that's a pretty good, and I would be happy to, if the time comes, Madam Chairman, to propose that we accept this budget. We may wish to have more discussion before that, but I think that's difficult for all of us, disappointing for all of us. The saving grace, I think, is that we've all agreed with the idea that we would keep a very close eye on the way things develop, so that we would have quarterly reviews. We'll console ourselves with the thought that might bring a partial solution to the problems. So can you bear in mind, please, Jane, that I would like to propose this budget when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brindle, and I have made a note of that. Sounds awful, but you're thinking in terms of pints of beer, and for once I'm really not. I'm actually thinking in terms of loaves of bread and tins of spaghetti hoops, and I'm really mindful that actually for some of our residents, that's a serious consideration for some of them. I've got Roy with his hand up, but if that's okay, I'm actually going to make sure that I hear from some of the other councillors that I haven't heard from yet, and I will come back to you, Roy. So, Dennis, is there anything you'd like to add at this stage, please?
No, I think I'll just be repeating what other people have said. I think the budget is as good as we're going to get it. It's unfortunate we have to put precept up at all, but I think we've done a remarkably good job bringing it down from over 11% down to the 3.9. I think that's brilliant. So I would like to second the budget when time comes to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I echo your words that yes, it has been a very difficult job to get to this point, and we've had to. But yes, acknowledgement should be made of the efforts to reduce this precept increase and the budget. Brenda, have I heard from you this evening?
Yeah, I think I started you off.
Yeah, you did. Sorry.
Well, no, I'm like you. It is that loaf of bread. It's not that pint of beer in London that cost about £5. Because actually, you know, every time we put the council tax up, you hit the poor. And it seems to me that what are we doing? Are we trying to keep the poor so that they'll always need us? I don't know. I just don't understand it. Pensioners do pay full council tax. They only get their state pension, and every time you put that up, you're in pensioners as well. So it's not just families. You hit pensions. Not everybody's got company pension. That's just my feeling, that we just keep putting things up and up, where we could have left it at 2.16 and carried on, but we haven't. We've gone the wrong route. But whether we recommend, I don't know why we're recommending this, because we can't, as finance, we said we can't actually change what they've got in their budget. That we leave that to them. So all we can say is we're ready to send this through to full council. Is that right or wrong?
That's correct, and that is the proposal that Councillor Brindle has made, and that is the seconding of that proposal that Councillor Crawford has made. So at this point, I will permit Councillor Brain to speak one more time, as he'd already had his hand up. But as I've got a proposer and a seconder on the table, I will move to the vote after Councillor Brain has spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must admit I'm in very much agreement with Councillor Cannon. I have always been of the opinion that you have to put the precept up to make the town better. The people of the town want to have nice things, and when the economy and everything is going well, I've always been of the opinion that they would rather pay it and live somewhere that has a little bit extra than not. So I've never had a conscience problem with voting for a precept increase. This year is different. There are so many people that have lost their income. There are so many people who don't know where their next loaf of bread is coming from. And I'm looking at this budget and saying, as a town, we have to do statutory and legal things. So let's defer everything else and leave the money in the people's pockets, whether it's a pint of beer in London or a loaf of bread. Let's let the people who are being squeezed by everybody else look at Thetford and say, they tried. They tried to give us that little bit extra. I cannot support this 2.9. I don't know whether I can do an amendment to say to go 2.16. But if I'm allowed to do that, that is what I would like to do.
I'll stand corrected by the town clerk, who I'm very glad is on the line at the moment, because this is quite a tricky one. Normally, within a proposal, there would be the opportunity to amend a proposal. The problem with the amendment that you have proposed, Councillor Brain, is that it doesn't take into account where those considerations in terms of expenditure need to fall. And that is why we, at the last meeting, requested that the committees re-looked at it by rejecting the budget as it stood back then. At the risk of sounding like I'm trying to provide a balanced argument, we must be mindful that actually prices do go up. And unfortunately, as I've seen with my shopping recently, prices are going up, and inflation is a fact of life, and typically that sits around 2%. So to have an alternative argument to say that an increase of around the 2% mark is kind of there or thereabouts in normal inflationary terms, would perhaps be a good way to look at it. And I think that's why we were quite comfortable when the SMT looked at it, that we were looking at 2.16. And obviously the discussions there happened. I think this is a simple question of, do you recommend this budget and the precept implications to full council or not? If it goes to full council and that's at this committee's wish, then they get the opportunity to talk through further. I'm very mindful that this has gone back to the committees as well, and we are on a deadline in terms of precept setting, that needs to be done by the end of January. Otherwise we don't get anything, and nobody gets anything, and yeah, that potentially is a very, very different conversation. So on that note, I have a proposer in the form of Councillor Brindle, if you're still happy to propose that, Mike.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I have a seconder in the form of Councillor Crawford. Are you still happy with that, Councillor Crawford?
Councillor
Yes,
James,
I am.
Oh, yes.
in standing orders, if an amendment is suggested, they need to vote on whether, if there's a seconder for the amendment.
How does, okay, I'm
The
really
thing
sorry,
is
do that?
well, standing orders doesn't, unfortunately, doesn't see a difference between any different types of amendments.
Yeah.
So it'd be up to Councillor Brain how he wanted to do that. And of course, he has to get a seconder and the vote has to pass.
Okay. And we have to take the amendment first before we vote on the original motion. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I would suggest that if, because of the topic, that Councillor Brain would need to be more precise about what that would look like. Otherwise, it's a vote to reject the budget and go back to committees. Otherwise, we don't really have anything to base that amendment on except a figure.
That was precisely my concern and why I felt that this was a simple yes or no vote.
Yep.
So do we need to vote on, if Councillor Brain can put an amendment together, do we need to vote on that first? Or is it a simple yes or no?
No, because he's asked for an amendment, and if he has a recommendation for that amendment, then he is allowed to say that and ask for a seconder.
Thank you. So it's my first time doing an amendment vote. How exciting. Silver linings. So Councillor Brain, you are proposing an amendment. Could you make clear the wording of that amendment proposal, especially for Councillor Crimmen and the, not Councillor Crimmen, the Minutes Secretary, Mr. Crimmen, apologies. I don't know if that's a promotion or a demotion. I apologise.
It's best well paid.
And obviously, so our fellow councillors know exactly what they're voting on. So over to you, Councillor Brain.
Thank you, Chairman. My amendment would be that Thetford Town Council recommends to the full council that they have a precept increase of 2.16%, which would give us a legally balanced budget by taking out everything that is not statutory
Chair,
or contractual.
Chair.
One moment, please, Councillor Crawford.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Town Clerk, is that an adequate amendment for this?
I think the problem with it is it's not referring to a particular budget. So that would need to go back for the staff to rework another budget.
In that case, Madam Chair, may I say that if the may I ask as why the budget is not 2.16, which was the statutory that the officers came up with. What caused it to be 2.9?
Would you like me to answer that, Madam Chair?
If you could, please, Town Clerk, that would be very helpful.
What happened was the SMT drew together a starting point. We were asked by Finance to come up with a starting point, and that starting point was, what do we have to do and what do we have to pay next year? And that was our starting point. And that was issued out to the councillors as a guide to them, to help them look at the operations within their committees and to decide what the committees felt was appropriate for their committees to be doing next year, bearing in mind what was put forward by the SMT. The changes within all those committees have been what the councillors on those committees believe to be for the greater good. And that is what the changes are. They have, as within their rights, they believe, such as Brenda said, with allotments, that allotments couldn't function properly without that £1,000, and so they've kept hold of that, and that is within the councillor's right to make those decisions on those committees. The thing put forward by the SMT was a starting point. That was informational, that was our statutory and contractual obligations that we have to fulfil. The rest of the changes to the budgets are what councillors believe to be for the greater good.
Thank you, Town Clerk. And I think, you know, to move from nearly 12% to almost 3% is a very, very positive movement. Councillor Crawford, you were trying to speak, and then I'll take Councillor Brindle, please.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, if the amendment finds a seconder and is taken forward, does that mean that this has to go back to every committee now to adjust its figures again and to try to get it down to the is it 2.16, isn't it? He's calling for.
Town Clerk, is that the impact of that if that decision was carried?
Yes, because you can't within your committee decide where those changes will be.
Thank you. Councillor Brindle, please. Mike, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I thought I'd managed to unmute. Apologies. I had expected that any amendment to this proposal would give an indication of where the money might be saved. So, for example, we were proposing a reduction now from 2.9 to 2.16, and that's a reduction of, I think, 0.76, if I got it right. That, given that the Personnel Committee spends well over half the total of our total expenditure, I wondered whether it might have been possible for Councillor Brame to suggest that the proposal that he makes to reduce expenditure could be taken from that committee. The advantage of this alternative would be that we would save a great deal of time. As I understand it now, what we're proposing through this amendment is that all the committees be asked to meet again in order to shave a saving of as yet unagreed and unstated by the amendment amount. It could be 0.76, which is the difference between the two figures, between 2.9 and 2.16. I can foresee that not being well met by some of them. done everything we can to make savings already, and now we're being asked to shave this further amount off. They may just simply say, no, we won't, thank you. It's up to the council to sort it out. And I don't think we'll be any further forward. My concern is that the days are ticking away. We have a full council meeting next week, which is the 16th. Would we be wanting to have further discussions from all the committees after that, which is getting terribly close to Christmas? I'm just concerned that the nature of the amendment doesn't really give us a way forward in terms of solving the problem it creates. It creates a problem by saying we have to save 0.76, but it doesn't tell us how that might be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So, as protocol dictates, and we know I like that, I have a proposer for the amendment of the original proposal. Do I have a seconder, please, for the amendment?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I now have a valid proposer and seconder for the amendment. I will now take the vote on the amendment. Councillor Brain.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
Against.
Councillor Burnett.
Against.
Councillor Canham.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
Against.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
And myself, and I need to vote, let alone use a casting vote, but it's not a casting vote. I'm going to vote against the amendment, and I will explain my reasoning for it. I think this item deserves a full airing at full council for everyone to engage with at the same time. And that's why I'm voting to vote against the amendment. So the amendment is not carried. So the original recommendation stands, and that is to recommend this budget to full council. So we'll go round the room again. I have a proposer in the form of Mike, if he is still happy to propose that.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I have a seconder in the form of Councillor Crawford, if he is still happy to second that motion.
Dennis, you might be muted.
Yes, I am muted. Sorry. Yeah, I'm voting in favour of the
So
original.
you're still happy to second the original proposal?
Yeah, I am. Yes, definitely.
So this is the recommendation of the 2.9% increase to the precept to full council.
Yes.
Councillor Brain.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor Burnett.
For.
Councillor Canham.
Against.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
Like you, Madam Chair, I'm thinking of bread and spaghetti hoops and a family of 11 that have lost their jobs and can't feed themselves. So I'm going against.
How much are they paying, I wonder, in the way of
Pardon?
tax?
Pardon?
How much council tax are they paying?
They pay a percentage because everybody has to pay a percentage.
Well, they can't
It doesn't matter if they're in a Band A house, but it doesn't matter if you're on
Can I
benefits.
suggest that this conversation is irrelevant, please?
Yes,
We've
sorry.
just had a vote. I'm sorry. It's currently 3-all, for and against. And once again, I am in the position of using my vote as chairperson, not my casting vote as chairperson. For the same reasoning that I voted against the amendment, I will support this going to full council for their full consideration, because I believe that this conversation needs to be had by the whole council and the considerations made for that. So therefore I vote for the proposal that the budget and its precept is recommended to full council, and I look forward to those discussions there.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question?
You may.
Right, that's going forward, which I thought it would do. But can the one at the 2.16% sit underneath, so that when councils are reviewing this one, they've also got the other one?
No.
Why not?
Because that is not the recommendation of this committee to full council. The recommendation to this committee, and actually councillors will have already received that information when we were first discussing these budget changes just over a week and a half ago, when the first committee meetings were taking place. So actually, hopefully everybody hasn't pressed delete on their paperwork, or hopefully it can be found on the website. Councillor Brindle, I've got your hand up there.
My apologies, it should be down. I think we've...
No problem. Okay, so thank you all very, very much for your time. That is the meeting closed. We have dealt with...
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Councillor Brown has put his hand up.
Yes, Councillor Brown.
Sorry to prolong your meeting, Chair. It was just a question for my own benefit, really, so that I understand slightly better. I heard your reasons for voting the way you did twice, because that meant it would have come to full council in due course on the 18th, 14th, whenever it is. My question is, what difference did that make to the passing of my amendment? Because that would have come to full council and they could have overturned it and said they wanted to vote for more expenditure rather than agreeing with less. So am I right in that, or is that wrong?
Wrong.
I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't want to take some more money off of the civic budget, frankly. I think I'm going to use the colloquialism. I think I've screwed it down as hard as I can. And I think this needs the larger discussion at full council. Full council do not have to accept this. Full council can choose to send it back. And you would be completely with you on your rights, Councillor Brown, to propose the amendment that you've already proposed here, again, should you choose to. And actually, I would encourage you to, if you feel that strongly about it. But I'm really mindful that it was a tied vote without my decision. And I think that's where we sit. And I would like the support of my fellow councillors as a whole council to work through this problem and this issue. And that's why I want it to go to full council. So frankly, in the nicest possible way, they can share this pain.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was just, I thought that it couldn't have gone through on the amendment, and that was a bit that baffled me, because I thought, well, surely the council will discuss it either way. So, you know, I'm happy with the way that it has gone. It should go to full council. I will be voting against any increases more than is absolutely necessary, and that's fine. I'm happy.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And thank you all very, very much for your time. I know this is always a difficult time of year, and especially in the current circumstances where we are facing, I'm going to use the word unprecedented challenges. I appreciate it's been very, very difficult for all. So thank you all very, very much, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Well done.
Thank